In this video, we're going to get my home lab cable set up into its final form. To get there, we're going to need to fix a couple of industrial RF modulators from 1996 and 1999 that have been giving me trouble. We'll clean up some open source software I wrote to handle the media streaming, and then we'll get everything installed. You might be wondering, what is home lab cable? Well, my definition is streaming any media of your choice in such a way that you can tune to it on a television. For a long time, I've been using this Channel Plus RF modulator. It can take composite in, your media source, turn it into coax out on a channel of your choice to tune to with your television. There's nothing wrong with this from a technical perspective, but I never really found a permanent spot for it in the rack. Whenever it got in the way, I would just throw it to the side and unhook everything, and it would end up in a pile on the floor. That's why I want to switch to these rack-mounted RF units. Everything will have a permanent place in the rack where it belongs. I've got several of these and they all have problems, so we're gonna need to fix a couple of them along the way. Then we'll deal with the software side of things. I'll show you how to get this set up yourself and some custom utilities that I've written. And finally, we'll get it all installed. Let's get into it. These are a pair of blonder tongue RF modulators, so they can take a composite signal in, you know, the yellow, white, red that you're probably familiar with, and they can turn it into something your TV can turn to over coax. In our example here, channel 9 or channel 13. These have each been hardwired to a channel. Our use case, of course, is to take the output from a Raspberry Pi, the composite output that these older 3B pluses can do, and we'll convert that over to a channel for some home lab cable. These two units are exhibiting similar but equally concerning behavior. Let's get this top one hooked up and I'll show you what it's doing. These are pretty much identical, by the way, except of course the channels that they're hard-coded to, which is desirable in my case. This first one has a very short cable, as you can see, and the other one has a longer, 3-foot normal length cable, so that's kind of weird. And the cables are different, and this one has aged differently. The black coating is wearing off down to metal. Super weird. On the back, you have the RF coax out that you would go put into your TV, and they have coax component in, but that's no big deal. You can buy these really cheap RCA to coax adapters and deal with that problem, so don't be worried about that if you're picking one of these up. They're also mono, but that's also no big deal. You can get little splitters that combine your right and left if you really want to. To help us out on our testing adventure today, my wife's childhood N64, complete with wave race. Pretty simple to get us started here. So on the back, obviously, I've got video and audio coming from the N64 and the coax cable going out to the TV. Got the TV tuned to channel 13. This is plugged directly into the VHF, UHF input on the back. And right when we turn it on, we can see the screen goes black. The N64 is off, so no surprise there. And the first hint at maybe something funny is going on is you can hear a very slight hum coming from this. And if we turn this on, a very loud hum, along with, of course, the sound. And it's really pronounced when the N64 is just showing the logo. We'll get the mic closer. So yeah, that really sounds like power related. In a previous video, I had shown some of this and got a bunch of really good comments. The verdict pretty much being something wrong with power. I did try one of these ground loop isolators in line on the coax cable and it had no effect whatsoever. So let's tear into this thing. We've just got some Phillips screws on the back here. And then the nuts on the coax connections are actually also retaining the case. So you take those off just with some pliers. These guys. Then this metal shield lifts up, but the coax connections have these little spacers, washer things. So each one has one, and those will go flying if you're not careful. I just had a quick look around. Nothing obviously suspicious. Look at this though. What happened? This light works, I think. Look at that. Some sort of overheating. It's on the legs too. Very weird. Got it plugged in. I'm just trying to figure out where the humming's coming from. It's this transformer. It's probably not picking it up on the mic. So this is going to sound ridiculous, but you can like take a tool, touch the item you're suspicious of, and put your ear to the other end. and it'll be very obvious if the tool is touching the thing that's vibrating, like a cap or something. Yeah, good advice, right? Put your head and attach it to an open power supply circuit. Anyway, it goes without saying, this is mains voltage, so be careful. Let's put the video in. Turn the N64 on. I can hear the hum coming over the TV with just the video connected. I wonder what it does. Only audio. That's weird. You don't get anything at all. Well, I do not have the skills required nor the equipment to analyze this RF output or the analog going in, or really anything going on here. Let's see what kind of voltage we're getting out. Looks like that little power section is giving us 12 volts DC to this left circuitry side, coming through a post right here. And yeah, very nice. You can just see it on the board. It's even labeled 12 volts. So it's taking 16 volts AC in from this transformer that is buzzing, making noise, and turning it into 12 volts over here. I think what I'd like to do is desolder the 12 volt line coming in to the circuitry. That's what this is from the segregated power section over here. And we'll hook up a 12 volt input this way with a little barrel jack separator like that. And we'll just see. We'll see if this section over here is introducing some sort of noise into the line. Turn the iron on. Does this seem like a weird way to do this? Like you've got this metal wall, they have some sort of isolator here so that the 12 volt isn't touching this, which is grounded of course. And then this wire runs all the way down the chassis. Why not just run this wire a little longer through the hole with a rubber grommet? Is there some sort of isolation behavior I'm missing here? Got that wire off, pretty uneventful. My camera died while I was doing that, sorry. I'm gonna make sure I understand that I'm actually getting 12 volts out of here. Glad I checked that one. 16 volts coming out of this 12 volt adapter. Grabbed another one. Let's see if this behaves any better. Yeah. 12. Much better. All right, we're just going to patch this in here real quick. Tin my iron up. All right, good enough. Now we need a ground point. I think I'm just going to stick it under this screw here, just to confirm. That is a grounded screw. Might not be the best ground though, so we'll see what happens. This is not what you want. We'll just keep that safely isolated. Okay, I'm just gonna plug it in, see what happens. Nothing should happen. Good, let's hook it up to the TV. Okay, we are hooked back up, pointed at the TV, channel 13. Plug it in. Man, it was really slow to come on. That's interesting. Is it still pulling the voltage we expect? It is. Well. Ooh, it's worse. Yeah, it's less annoying when music is actually playing. And it's not bad enough to hear it over the music like I could before. We'll call this partially fixed. Well, I thought about it a little more. Changing the power supply made things better. So switching from the tired old internal one to a wall wart did make things better. So I thought, let's try a better wall adapter. Check this out. Plug it in. No buzzing. Fixed. Yes, this thing, all it needed was a better power supply. There is occasional buzz. Sometimes there's none at all. Sometimes there's just a little bit. Vast improvement. And this is not even a nice AC adapter. So what I'm going to do is hunt down either an internal one to put in here or find the nicest AC adapter I can. The quality of power for these RF modulators is really important. As you've seen, we get all that buzzing from a power supply that works and is giving the right voltage, but it's dirty power. It makes a mess of everything. I'm happy with this. Let's rip these guts out and make this a little more permanent. I'm just gonna rip all this out entirely. I could get another transformer, 120 volts, 110 in to a transformer changing it into 16 volt AC is actually really common for doorbells, at least here in North America. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure all the ones I could find online would be even worse than this old one that's wearing out. So I'm just going to take everything out. Couple of screws for that transformer on the back here, which are unfortunately connected by nuts. So you got to do one of these maneuvers. Didn't mean to break that. Oh well. Couple of screws here, and we'll have to do something about this LED. This voltage regulator is using the case as a heat sink. We gotta undo that. Just like that. Got everything out. What was going on here where that LED was? Really weird. Corrosion. Kind of looks like rust or like something burnt. Interesting. The legs on the LED have a little black stuff on them too. I'd like to reuse this, so I'm going to pull it out, and it's in line, of course, with this resistor over here. LEDs need a resistor in line, otherwise they'll burn out, so I'll just copy whatever that value is. It is, ironically, very helpful to add solder when you are desoldering something, especially something this old. This is probably from the early 2000s, maybe earlier. So you add the fresh stuff. You don't have to be fancy with it. And this should make it a lot easier to get that out. Got it. Now I need what appears to be a 222 ohm resistor. Red, red, red. That's nice and easy. 220 will be close enough. Place your bets. Oh yeah. I'm just doing this because I literally couldn't remember if it worked. All right, we can reuse it. Well, that was short-lived. I was getting everything wired up and one of the legs fell off the LED, so rest in peace, little guy. Let's give it a shot before I close it back up. That's a lot brighter now. Nope, no buzz. Here's what I came up with. Threw an extra sleeve of heat shrink tubing here. Obviously heat shrinked anywhere I had soldered. And we got a nice ground point here. The resistor is in this sleeve right here on the positive side. It gets ridiculously hot. That little pack of resistors I got that on Amazon years ago. In my experience, they're like total crap. So I either used the wrong value or most likely those just suck. I really need to buy a multi-pack of resistors that are nice. Anyway, I can solve that later. Not gonna worry about that for now while we're testing. Here's the aftermath of fixing just this one. Happy with that repair though. That's really nice to have that one fixed. This is the first one I bought, and it's the nicest looking one, kind of attached to it. I'm gonna clean all this up and we'll move our attention over to channel 9 down here. I'm also realizing why the one we just fixed on the top here had this much shorter cord. The one on the bottom has a really long one. You can daisy chain them, so this would have been coming out here like this, and you can actually just plug it into the next one to get power, sort of like stereo equipment. So yeah, maybe Blonder Tongue sold them with these shorter pigtails, or someone went in there and did that themselves, because the cords are of a different style. Anyway, that's probably why that's shorter. Should I install a daisy chain barrel plug? This one has a slightly different problem. The video and audio coming out of it are perfect. No problem whatsoever. But listen to it when I turn it on. Yeah, I'm guessing transformer issue again. Let's get in there. We're in, opens just like the other one. And look at that. The same exact corrosion on the LED, or whatever this is, burn marks, rust, that the other one had. That's weird. I wonder if that's a known issue. So yeah, let's turn it on. Yeah. Just pushing on it changes the vibration pattern. It's not the mounts. I checked these screws. It's tight in there. Something's wrong internally, causing it to vibrate. So because that other repair went so well, I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna rip all this out and we'll put a barrel jack in. Yeah, I don't think I'll bother with That resistor. Not too bad. That's how we ended up. I skipped the LED in this one as well until I buy some better resistors. I don't trust them. Let's test it. All right, let's plug it in. And of course, the transformer's gone, so it makes no noise whatsoever. Let's get on channel 9. Power it on. Perfect. It's even better than the other one. Silent, no noise whatsoever. Excellent. Let's get this put back together. It's the next day, and I had trouble falling asleep last night because I couldn't stop thinking about that overheating resistor on this LED. And then it finally dawned on me. I read the resistor value on the original board wrong. It was red, 222. I forgot that the third stripe is actually 2 digits. It's not 222 ohms, it's 2200 ohms. So of course, this thing is getting way too hot in here. And it's funny, the whole time I was putting it in, I was thinking, man, how did Blondertongue get away with such a small ohm resistor? You know, I was expecting, 1,000 ohms or something. And of course, they didn't get away with it because the laws of electricity wouldn't have let them. For good measure, I've got a 3300 ohm resistor in here. If you know enough about your LED, you can actually calculate the resistor you need based on the voltage and forward current of the LED. I don't know anything about my LEDs because they're from the Elegoo Upgraded Electronics Fun Kit. No data sheets with this one. But that's all right. We'll throw 3300 in there just to be safe, and we'll run a test. Plug this guy in here. Now, within seconds, obviously the 220 ohm resistor, I couldn't touch this at all. It was way hot to the touch within seconds. That's what's going on inside this one right now. So I'm going to leave this going for like 30 minutes or something and see how it goes. All right, about 30 minutes later. And of course, yeah, still cold. So I think that's going to work just fine. I'm going to redo this one and I'll install an LED in this one. That took forever, but the result was worth it. Got working LEDs. I'm getting pretty good at installing barrel jack mods and new LEDs in Blondertongue modulators. Let's get one of these guys wired up to a Raspberry Pi and we'll start looking at the software situation. Pretty straightforward. Got the Raspberry Pi plugged in here. It's on the network using one of these nice PoE injectors to actually power it off the network cable. It's always fun. It's spitting out composite video over this cable. Got the video coming in along with the audio. And this is what I was talking about earlier. These RF modulators usually just take mono and you can just get one of these splitters to combine left and right and bring it into one. And then of course we're going out to the TV. We have the Raspberry Pi broadcasting its screen on channel 9, as you can see right there. In the terminal here, we are SSH'd into the Raspberry Pi. It's called TV. And I have a bunch of TV shows mounted here from my NAS that we can start playing around with and try to get them to show up. The simplest thing you can do, in my opinion, if you want to get this going yourself, is use VLC, the open source media player. It's very capable, runs great on the Raspberry Pi. We can just say VLC and I'm pointing it at a single episode of The Simpsons and hit go. Sure enough, The Simpsons are now playing on channel 9 in my house. But that's a little limited because you'd have to come in here and do it every time or write a fancy script to do it. I think there's a simple way to just get VLC to randomize. You can invoke VLC in such a way that it'll just randomly play what's ever in a folder. So you give it -- playlist auto start -- loop -- playlist tree and then the folder. This is just going to randomly plow through Simpsons episodes. There it goes. And there's some other ways you can set up playlists and stuff, but it wasn't really going to be as flexible as I had dreams for, basically, in my own home lab. So of course, I wrote my own home lab cable management tool called go-homelab-cable because it's written in Go. So GHLC, it's got a command line utility. You can start up a server. You can also use a client to interact with a server. So what's that look like? GHLC server. Pretty similar to VLC. It's using VLC under the hood. We're just able to control a lot more things, which I'll show you. You give it a path, just like before. I've got a bunch of stuff in media. Let's just point it at The Simpsons again. Okay, a server has started up. The Simpsons are playing. So what? Well, if we go to another tab here and we fire up the client, GHLC client, you can see right away it spits back the episode that's playing and what's up next. So that's kind of interesting. And maybe even more interesting, if we hit a browser, if we hit the Raspberry Pi at port 3004, we have a UI that is attempting to tell us things. So it's got some status stuff. It's got the playing and what's up next. It's got this cute little rack mount looking thing. And you can also notice that it's a total disaster. It's not responsive. I am not a designer. I stole a bunch of these little CSS examples off the internet, and it's not working. This is one of the scope creep items that has slowed me down from making this thing more usable and sharing it with you all. So this is one of the problems. But back to the Raspberry Pi that's running go-homelab-cable, it also exposes a REST API. So it has this notion of networks. So we can ask the server instance, hey, give me all your networks. By default, it only has one. You can only have one. This is more scope creep I introduced on myself. They have call signs, which is kind of cute, I guess. And networks can have channels. So we can ask KHLC, go-homelab-cable, what its channels are. And you can see we have the one channel you're watching right here, and what's playing, what's up next. You can give it commands to control the channel. So I have this channel playing The Simpsons right here, and I can tell it, play next. And there it goes. Now it's advanced to the next one, playing this one now, and it's queued up another one for what's next. So I can just issue that again if I want. And there we go. So this was the sort of flexibility I was looking for, except I did all sorts of scope creep on myself. So that nice, friendly client, it only tells you what's next. You can't actually tell it to play the next one. So the whole thing's kind of frustrating. I've let it kind of scope creep on me to the point where I don't even work on it. So for the purposes of this episode, I'm going to pare it way down. I'm going to make all the multi-channel stuff super optional. And I want to make it really easy for someone other than me to just come in here and fire up go-homelab-cable, get this stuff running, and be able to control it through a web browser or through this command line client. Speaking of this was a cute idea and everything, but it's a disaster. So I'm going to throw this up in a branch for future reference, and I'm going to scrap this whole thing and make a super simple UI that just tells you what's going on and lets you click next. Without further ado, we'll do a badass coding montage, which is probably going to take me several days, and I'll be back. Allow me to introduce you to the development setup. This is a VM I'm SSH'd into called Big Ubuntu, which I made like years ago. He's literally just a VM with 32 cores and 32 gigs of RAM in my Proxmox instance, and I use it for development, basically. So we've got go-homelab-cable sitting here, and VS Code has a really nice extension called the Remote SSH extension, and I can connect, open up a folder of my choice, and bam. So all this lives on that VM. I'm SSH'd in, basically, and then as I'm developing and testing, I run the server. Back over here in Proxmox, I take a look at the VM. I usually have this on another monitor, and you can see it's playing The Simpsons. Slowly and terribly, this thing doesn't have any video hardware, but it's enough for me to see if it's doing the right thing and advancing to the next episode and so on. Let's get busy. Progress. Now you can run the CLI utility and say client live, and it'll spit back some text about what's playing, what's up next. You can always optionally give it a JSON flag, and it'll spit back JSON if you wanted to call this thing programmatically for some reason. But we can say client live. It says playing is season 6, number 1. Up next is season 7, number 6. And now we can just simply say client play next, and it'll spit back what it's up to. You can see in the background it's switching episodes. And now 7.6 is playing, as we'd expect. Up next is 4.10. You can do that all day if you want. And of course, ask for the information. That's much easier to use. And you don't have to worry about channels or any of that complicated stuff I had only in my head. Now let's move on to the UI. We're almost there. I want the text to bounce back and forth. Not the whole LCD. Hilarious. I think we're in business. Let's start up a new server. It's kicking off an episode of The Simpsons in the background there. Go over to our client, and it tells us what it's playing and what's next. We can say play next with the client, and we're playing 04 episode 16 now. Go to the web browser, and it's showing us the right episode, which is great. Click this next button, and we can see it's cycling in the background, shows the new one. This is as far as I'm going to take it tonight. It's still terrible. Basically needs to be completely rewritten from a UI perspective, but it's usable. By the time you're watching this video, at least this will be available on GitHub. With that out of the way, let's get back to the fun stuff. I've got this Extron computer to video scan converter. It takes VGA in, turns it into composite out for these RF modulators. I've got big servers in the rack. They've got VGA out. They're not working very hard, so I figure why not take advantage of that in the most convoluted way possible. And then, of course, I've been dying to rack this thing up. We need active monitoring at the rack, folks. This is a serious cable operation we've got going on down here. Let me show you what this Extron's all about. This is an Extron rack-mountable computer to video scan converter. It can take VGA in and turn it into composite S-video RGB out. Really cool. In a video quite a while ago, I picked this unit up and the power supply was broken and I went about fixing it. I actually put a Pico PSU in here and it now takes a barrel jack. I have this 3D printed plug, pretty sweet. Reminded myself that it's 12 volt center positive. In fact, I need to go do that on the blonder tongues. Are you sensing a barrel jack trend here with my modifications? We're gonna rack that thing up and take the VGA out from this Dell R720 and use that for one of our channels. This is going to be so good. I have a power distribution issue because I'm changing everything over to 12 volt wall warts. I'll solve that later. On the back of this thing, VGA going to the R720. This is going into the blonder tongue. And coming out on channel 9 is my Proxmox login. It's never easy. Here's the R720 when I try to run the server. It complains about audio issues if we run speaker test. Yeah, it's complaining about audio. That machine has a video card in there that I don't think works. It's trying to redirect audio there. It doesn't have an audio card otherwise. Let's pull that video card, put an audio card in, see what happens. I was going to lament about this machine having been up for 2 years or something, but it's only been up for 22 days. Wonder when that happened. Good night. I haven't been in here in a very long time. If you're getting one of these, spend the money on the rails. You will not regret it. So let's see here. Comes off. Believe this is our video card, which I've never been able to get to work. So let's get that out of there. An old NVIDIA Quattro. I do need to figure out a video card situation for this very reason, actually. We'll try throwing this really crappy Sound Blaster in here. It's a half height card. Got to take that off. This thing came with both brackets, believe it or not, full and half length. So we'll get that short one off there, put this on, just like that. I'll bet you didn't think you were going to see a crappy Sound Blaster being installed into a Dell R720 enterprise server today when you woke up. I aim to please. Here's the most satisfying part of these rails. When you slide it in. It helps if you put the lid back on. These Dell lids sit on there, and then you use the latch to close them into place. I really like that design. Now, it's really funny to watch that server boot on channel 9. That old enterprise iron takes quite a while to start back up, but she's back online. Let's see if we can run the go-homelab-cable server. It's running, but it's not outputting on the right display. I think we can figure that out. Well, that was a lot more convoluted than I thought it was going to be. Of course, we couldn't start it up because we didn't have a graphical environment. The X server wasn't running. You can see we have one now, and The Simpsons running on my R720 Proxmox server, going through a VGA to composite converter, hitting a blonder tongue RF modulator, and I'm watching it on channel 9. Piece of cake. Let's complete the setup. Folks, this is ridiculously good. I am so happy with how this turned out. I can't believe I was living without this all this time. Oh, and check this out. I can play N64 in here now. New gaming setup. Don't worry about what's going on behind the scenes. We won't worry about that. I'll clean that up. Never. I'm super pumped on that setup. I love the 3 screens on there, seeing what's live on each channel, and you can play N64. So awesome. I actually have another one of these blonder tongue units. Might have noticed in the intro video, and it's like a really impressive, way cooler looking one. It doesn't work at all. No output, nothing. I don't think it's a power issue, something else going on. So someday I'll fix this one, but I think 2 channels is good enough for now, and I really like that everything is inside the rack. That whole setup uses about 40 watts, even with all 3 screens on, so that's okay. I really need to look into solar. The go-homelab-cable software is okay. I'm not making any promises on that, but it's usable. I've pressure tested it pretty good. It's been running channels for days at a time, doesn't crash, and you can go use it and edit it to your heart's content at the GitHub link down below. But that'll do it for this one. I think my HomeLab cable setup is in a good position for a long time to keep me happy, and I can always just rotate through what each channel is playing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I've got a lot more videos coming down the pipe in 2024. And if you'd like to support the channel further and fuel my eBay addiction, you can check me out on Patreon. I post behind the scenes type updates. I actually posted a full workshop 30-minute tour, and I try to occasionally post videos early before they go up on this main channel. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you tune into the next one.